Hey, Elissa Walker Campbell, welcome back to the Big East Sports Show. And this holiday season, we are keeping the Christmas spirit alive, delivering some of the biggest names in sports. So as we prepare to close out 2024, we're going to go inside the ropes and visit with Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, Rex, and thank you for joining us. We're thrilled to have you on the program.
Oh, thanks for having me back. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays.
Yeah. Well, good news. Tiger Woods, he is back in action this week at the PNC Championship at the Ritz-Carlton Golf Club in Orlando, Florida, with his 15-year-old son, Charlie. And this is his first competitive action since the British Open and when he had back surgery in the month of September. So let's talk about some realistic expectations. What say you?
I think the expectations for this week at the PNC is he wants to enjoy himself. He made it clear at the Hero World Challenge, which was held earlier this month down in the Bahamas, which he hosted. He's just not ready to compete. 72 holes, going head-to-head against the world's best players, having to walk 72 holes. That's probably the biggest part to point out there. But this is different. It's only 36 holes. He's riding in a cart. And most important, he's with his son, Charlie, who can absolutely play. So he's probably going to be leaning on Charlie quite a bit. But this has become his fifth major. Like, it's very important for him to share these moments with Charlie. And I think everyone kind of expected him to play.
One of the discussion points on my show last week is, which Woods are you more interested in seeing play this week, Tiger or his son Charlie at the PNC?
Both. It's fun watching Charlie sort of evolve as a golfer. And you've seen him getting bigger, stronger, faster, a lot like his dad did earlier in his career. And I also think it's fun to watch his confidence grow. He just finished, I think, runner-up in the state junior tournament in Florida, which is pretty good. I mean, Florida's got some really good junior golfers. So you see him evolve. You see him getting more confidence. That's fun. But of course, everyone's going to be watching Tiger Woods. I don't have very high expectations because of everything he's gone through. You pointed out he just had his fifth microdiscectomy surgery on his back in September. So, I mean, the physical toll that this has taken on his body is pretty clear now.
Hey, we're going to take a deep dive and talk some more about Tiger, but certainly a lot of curiosity about Charlie Woods. As you mentioned, he is a high school sophomore in Florida. What can you share about his game and perhaps just how much, as you're saying, he has evolved, how much he's improved from 1 year ago? And let's not forget, Charlie qualified for the U.S. Junior this past summer.
And not only that, I mean, last year you can kind of compare. I kind of go back 3 or 4 years ago when he was, he was 11, 12 years old, played with Tiger for the first time. He was just a little guy, and it was fun to watch him, but now he's turned into a bona fide player. There was a story that happened earlier this year at the Masters. I was talking with Justin Leonard's son, who also lives in Florida, also competes sort of on the junior circuits, and I asked him, what's Charlie like? And he said, just like his dad. Like, he talks a lot of trash, and he goes out and he backs it up more times than not. So, and it's fun. Like, I think everyone who, at least anyone who pays attention to golf, has seen the viral video of Charlie doing a fist pump or walking in a putt. And everything he does is just a smaller version of Tiger. So that's fun to watch as well.
Well, it certainly has been fascinating to watch in just all of his competitive opportunities. But let's talk some more about Tiger's health, which does remain a work in progress as he underwent back surgery in the month of September. Where is he at? And it's just remarkable, I think, how as a professional athlete, he does continue to remain in peak physical performance. He may not be 100%, but he's still moving forward.
I think when you talk to people around him in his camp, they will tell you that if you go out on a random day and walk 18 holes and see the swing and see the things that he's still capable of doing, that is the same Tiger Woods that we covered in his prime, that we all wanted to see, that did special things in the game of golf. The problem is he's got to walk 72. And we have seen it time and time again now where he gets off to a fast start. This year's Masters is probably the best example, and his body just won't cooperate. And we're hopeful, I think people inside his camp are hopeful that this most recent procedure, the back surgery in September, will be the magic formula. But it's getting harder and harder to see how that happens because he turns 49 this month. He's not getting younger.
Yes, and he only started, 5 events in 2024. Is this the new norm for him now?
Yeah, I think so. And look, in the Bahamas, he sort of reiterated what his plan is each year, and that's to quote-unquote play once a month. Now, that doesn't mean 12 times. To be clear, that's sort of the golf calendar is what he's talking about, and that's the 4 majors, probably the Players' Championship, and then you would add his event in Los Angeles, the Genesis Invitational. So I think even if everything goes his way, the max we'll probably see him is 7 times over the course of the year, maybe 8 if you start talking about a Ryder Cup or a President's Cup. But even the best case scenarios, I don't think are much higher than that.
Let's turn our attention to Justin Thomas as we are closing out 2024. Rex, what did he show us at the World Hero Challenge? Because it looks like, I know he didn't have the finish that he wanted, but his game is trending in the right direction.
I would say the Hero World Challenge, where you pointed out he finished runner-up just behind world number 1 Scottie Scheffler, and a lot of people have done that this season. Also, what JT did at the Zozo Championship just a few weeks prior to that in Japan, he also finished runner-up there. It was fun to watch JT in the Bahamas because he's getting the swagger back that he didn't have, certainly not in 2023, and he fought to get back in 2024. And this is closer to the version of we've seen him when he won major championships and was a regular contender on the PGA Tour. He led the field in strokes gained off the tee and strokes gained tee to green, which is significant because normally Scottie Scheffler owns that category. So it's a really good step in the right direction for JT.
A lot of positives from the World Hero Challenge. What facet of his game impressed you the most, and perhaps where has he improved the most?
I think that if you go back to, and Brando Chambly, my colleague at the Golf Channel, did a really good breakdown of this while we were in the Bahamas, where you look at his iron play has always been the strength of his game. And that had kind of fallen off in recent years. And it's sort of the byproduct of he struggled on putting-wise. We know that. That's a pretty familiar theme when it comes to JT. And he probably spent more energy, more time focused on that the last few years. And along the way, I think he lost some of that ball striking brilliance that was in his DNA. And he's gotten that back. And again, when you can lead the field, specifically from the fairway, because that's what Scottie Scheffler does best. If you can lead the field when Scottie's in the field in that category, you know you're playing really well.
Okay, we talked about Justin Thomas. Let's talk some hypotheticals and look ahead to 2025. Who will have the most successful year, Rory or Xander?
I'm going to go with Xander because he's proven it. I mean, to win 2 majors in 1 year, he had the breakthrough at the PGA Championship, and I think that sort of was an epiphany for him, and then he followed that up with the Open Championship. Everything about his game is you can't find a flaw. There's nothing that you can pick apart. When it comes to JT, you and I could sit down and have a long conversation about his putting, and he needs to find some sort of solution for that. But if you talk about Xander and someone who's going to challenge Scottie, Xander is the obvious choice. That said, it's a long, tall mountain to climb if they're really going to challenge him. But I would give it to Xander.
Well, let's shift gears and reflect on some of the decisions that the PGA Tour announced last month that is officially getting smaller. The Tour's policy board ratified changes to the largest professional tour, fundamentally altering the size and competitive structure of the league. So what was your reaction to this new era for the PGA?
I think they've been trending in this and talking about this for a really long time. I will say that by and large, most players were not supportive of this because the idea of limiting the scope, limiting the pathway for the next Scottie Scheffler or Rory McIlroy or Justin Thomas. We just got through having long conversations about them. And now you have narrowed that pathway for whoever that next player is that comes up. I don't think anyone was in favor of that. However, if we went back 100 years in time and you and I had a conversation about what's the best field size for the Sony Open, for example, we probably come to a number closer to 120 than we do 144. And all of this is random, but when you talk about how do you put the best product out on the PGA Tour, and that's really what these changes were about, I think most people will agree this was a step in the right direction.
Well, I have to wonder how this will present a better product. I mean, what motivated this decision, and how much does perhaps even pace of play factor into this?
That was part of it. The tour was really, really clear not to lean into that because this wasn't about making sure rounds finished up on Friday afternoon and the cut was made Friday and they weren't having to come back the next morning to finish it up. This really is about making sure that you get the best players going head-to-head against each other more often. And it's also about what is particularly best for that golf course as we go through the year. Again, when you play in January, it's going to be smaller fields because we don't have as much daylight as opposed to when we get to July and we play the Canadian Open, that can be a larger field, 156 players. The idea here is if you narrow the focus, if after next year you kept your PGA Tour card and finished inside the top 100, you accomplished something. You are going to be able to set your schedule in a way that you've never done before. And I think that was part of the focus. A PGA Tour card means more now than it did just 2 months ago before they announced these changes.
Rex, have you spoken to some of the players, and what are they saying about the changes to field size, eligibility, and competing in smaller fields?
I think the difficult part is going to be Players, and again, we need to make sure that the next Scotty Scheffler doesn't fall through the cracks. The challenges for the players are going to be, and I spent a lot of time talking with players towards the end of the fall about this, is suddenly you take what was a successful year on the PGA Tour. Let's say you finished 99th on the PGA Tour this year, and even though that sounds like a big number, that means you're part of the 1% of 1% of players who play golf on the planet. When you've narrowed that focus even more now, I think you're only going to get the cream rising to the top more.
Well, I think about college players that have aspirations to take their game to the next level. I mean, what's the message being sent to them? Because that's got to create a little bit of anxiety because it's that much tougher now to make it to the PGA Tour.
I mean, there's no doubt about that. If you're a player coming out of college, if you're a really good player, the PGA Tour has done a good job of creating pathways directly from college to the PGA Tour. It's called PGA Tour U, and we have seen it. Ludwig Gilbert, who is an unqualified star right now, and he took that pathway, and I think you'll continue to see that. But if you're a guy that's just outside there, it's only going to get harder. I will say that the trade-off, at least in theory, is going to be you've made the PGA Tour a better product. You've made it more elite. Now, some of that needs to trickle down to the next level. In this particular case, you would talk about the Korn Ferry Tour, for lack of a better term. That's kind of AAA, if you want to compare it to baseball. Now, if you can sort of allow some of those resources to move now down to the Korn Ferry Tour, I think the pathway still exists for a player coming out of college to still play their way on, but it definitely got smaller and more difficult.
Hey, we are winding down our time. Rex Hoggard from the Golf Channel has been our very special guest. And I got to ask you, weighing in on the PGA Tour and Live Golf, is there any chance that there would be a merger in 2025? And perhaps, Rex, talk to us. I mean, what's the holdup and what are some of the biggest issues at stake?
I think we're getting close. There's been a lot of reports. Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg both had reports in recent weeks talking about that they're pretty much done with the financial terms of the deal. And it is interesting because I was told from the very beginning of this that the financial terms were going to be the easier part. I'm not saying it's easy. This is $1 billion deal. But when you compare it to the competitive elements, the financial stuff is pretty straightforward. So this is just money changing hands. The difficult part moving forward is that I truly expect them to announce soon, maybe even before the end of the year, that there is a deal between the PGA Tour and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia. From there, you need to figure out a bunch of things. One, how the Department of Justice investigation into possible antitrust violations is going to impact any kind of deal. Two, you need to figure out some sort of pathway back for the players who left the PGA Tour and joined Live Golf. That has proved to be very complicated, very difficult, very emotional. So it's not going to be an easy discussion or an easy decision to make. And then finally, you have to figure out how the two sides fit together. You have to figure out, will Live Golf continue to exist on its own, parallel to the PGA Tour? Will you try to combine the two tours? So there is still a ton of work to do.
He is simply the best. Rex Hoggard, check him out on the Golf Channel. Also give him a follow on X or Twitter at Rex Hoggard GC. And we wish you happy holidays and look forward to connecting again in 2025. Take care.
Thank you.
You bet. Stick around. Much more coming your way on the Big E Sports Show.